I wanted to ask you guys to start off with, have you been to any cool events recently? Or what's the best event you've been to recently?
Event. I mean, does a
Event, don't act like, oh, why are we talking about events? Like,
No, because I mean, I in my personal life, I don't really go to events, like professional events.
right.
But non-professional, like something.
But concert,
cool.
like a concert. So went to see The Two Towers, the movie, with a live orchestra and a live choir.
The Two Towers, Lord of the Rings.
The movie, yes, Lord of the Rings, yeah.
Right.
That was just amazing, because the thing is, what always happens is that the music tends to just disappear into the background of movies.
Yeah.
You know, you do hear it, but it's kind of a little bit more, you're focusing on what's being said, what the kind of story is, and then the music just sits in the background. Just having that music be really in the front just makes you think of it a little bit differently, and it makes you just kind of appreciate it maybe a little bit more.
So the movie was playing, and then there was a live orchestra on stage.
Yep. And a choir.
And you're telling me that
singers.
was better than all of the Brussels panel events you've been to recently?
No doubt.
So, but what did they kind of do stuff around it to make the overall experience better? What was, because I'm trying to think how, all right, if we're going to go into like the types of events we all do, how can we compete with that if we don't have a live orchestra at our disposal?
You know, having those chimes, you know, before you go in, because you are in a
Opera house, was it?
opera house, that's
Yeah.
it. And you know, they do play those gongs, right, at the beginning, like the kind of timers that you have to kind of get people in. And it's just like 1, 2, and then 3, and then everyone has to go back in, right? And it's kind of giving you that impetus to kind of, okay, I have still 5 minutes. Oh, I have 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, now I really should get in.
Builds up that kind of tension.
And builds up a little bit of that tension as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
What about you, Ali?
I was thinking about this because we had discussed it yesterday, and at an event I recently went to, so I love going to concerts, I love live music, I love going to music festivals, but something I've started going to once in a while are the Candlelights concerts. Have you heard of these? I feel like you guys maybe have seen Instagram ads of them everywhere. But I've gone to a couple of them, and they're actually really fun and really nice. It's a cool way to get out in the evening and like see a pianist perform Hans Zimmer or Coldplay or whatever, and with all of the candles everywhere, it creates a certain ambiance. And I think it's a very interesting event in the sense that it's obviously very repeatable, but it's very simple in its concept and its execution. But I'm sure they're making a lot of money doing this because there are so many events, and they have them in Brussels, Leuven, Liège, Antwerp. I'm sure they're like all over Europe. So I think it's just a very clever concept because you get to see a recital essentially, and some nice music and have a nice evening out. But yeah, it's just very repeatable and very simple in how they put it together.
Repeatable
so I think that was,
concepts. I feel like that word
I think
will
it's
be
really clever.
repeated throughout this episode, I feel like.
Yeah.
So thinking about like kind of more Brussels events, maybe this is more for you, because this would be before Malte has come in. When people approach you and say, we want to do an event, what are the things you wish they would be thinking about right at the beginning, before they've even done anything that they usually aren't in Brussels?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to events in Brussels, sometimes it seems like organizations come to you and say, okay, we want to do this event, but sometimes they want to do an event for the sake of doing an event, right? Rather than actually thinking about, okay, what is the goal here? Are we trying to bring together certain communities? Are we trying to get policymakers to show up? Do we want media attention? Are we trying to move the needle on some kind of policy ask? So I think really starting from their why and the reasoning for the event, rather than just saying, oh, you know, it's been a few months, like let's do another event, right? And I think that is something that we don't deal with too much, thankfully. Like I think there's usually a certain strategic imperative for someone to have an event, but that is always something that sometimes gets lost a bit because, you know, some higher up has said, we need to have an event. And so they jump and make an event happen. So I think it would be good always for the Brussels bubble, just to think of that when they are having in this event, because it's a lot of money to spend, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of resources that you're spending on this one thing. So you want it to work smarter and harder for your organization.
And in terms of, you mentioned the opera house, what can a venue add? Because that would be one of the first things you decide, right? Like, where do we want to host the event? What should you be thinking about when you choose a venue?
I don't know if you really decide the venue before you decide how many people you even want in the room, you know?
Just contradict me. It's
you know,
fine.
yeah, no, it's no problem, always.
Yeah.
Because you kind of have to think about what kind of event you want to have first, right? You don't want to just go, okay, yeah, we definitely want to have it in the Bibliothèque Solvay.
So you've
We definitely wanna
established
have
the
it
event.
in,
You've established what kind of event you want.
All right.
How do you fit that in with the venue?
Because sometimes you don't have a choice. I think that's a thing worth mentioning, right? Because you might have all of these ambitions for this amazing, incredible event, but then you're like, okay, I have this one venue. It seats 100 people. This is what we're working with, you know? So like...
So is bigger better in the venue game, would you say?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it depends on what you're going for, right? If you're going to have that kind of huge blowout kind of event, like end of year party kind of thing, right? You know, these are all of our achievements, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, you want a big venue because you want to cram as many people in there as possible. But sometimes the best thing is just having something smaller, having something more intimate, having something that where people can connect a little bit more and can also just network easier.
But what if my KPI on the deck that I sent to my members is how many people attend the event, Malte?
That's a bad
That's-
KPI.
Exactly.
He was setting that one up.
Right, so you should redefine, you should really shape your KPIs.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So it goes back to what I said before. Like, what is the goal? What does success look like for your event? If it's how many bums are in seats, that's not a good metric, right? That doesn't.
So what's a good metric?
I think a good metric is, were the right conversations had, were the right people put together in the room. Maybe you have a panel or a fireside chat that's happening amongst, let's say, industry, policymaker, trade association, whatever it is, and having all of these different voices heard in one room. I think obviously it depends on what your organization's goals are in the end, but having those kind of thoughtful, strategic approaches to, am I making an impact? Is this event actually doing something positive for our organization?
So the way you're describing it actually is so much work needs to be put in pre-event to almost like consult and finesse what the event should achieve. Like it's almost as much work as the event itself, so that the people who attend the event or who have asked for the event, let's say these imaginary senior people or members somewhere, are not disappointed by the event, even if it is a really good event, but it doesn't fit the frame of mind that so you really need to shape how people view the event, is what you're saying essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes a lot of thinking work, right? I mean, you can think in terms of deliverables, like, oh, I need to make this visual or make sure these PowerPoint slides are where they need to be, whatever. But the grand scheme of things, like the event is supposed to serve some specific purpose, right? And so it does take a lot of strategic thinking before you even get close to the day of the event itself.
How do you get people away from thinking like just in terms of numbers? It's a bit like, it reminds me of like social media campaigns. How do you get people away from just being like, no, it's how many bums were in seats, it's how big the name, the big name speaker was, who I got there?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could kind of compare it to a lot of what we talk about when it comes to social media in the bubble, right? Because we are a community of micro communities. We're all these very niche specific kind of audiences, working with other very niche specific audiences. So I think it's just about getting away from what industry and organizations outside of the bubble are doing, because Brussels is kind of one of those very weird specific places in the sense that numbers don't really mean as much. I think it's really more about the relationships you're building with people, the conversations you're having, the ideas you're exchanging. So it's a tough thing, I think, to shift from, because I think a lot of us just in our education and in our jobs outside of the bubble, if we've had any of those, it's just difficult to remove those two things and kind of divorce that idea of, I need to not be so precious about numbers, so to speak. But it is the reality of the city that we work in
Yeah.
and the environment that we're in the bubble. It's very much about those conversations and the things that you're able to push the needle on with
And
this
so
event.
based on that, what do you look for in a venue? Because I had a complaint recently from a client of mine from Vienna. I've really, if he watches, he won't watch this, but if he watches this, he'll know it's him now, because I only have one client in Vienna. He's very familiar with Brussels, but he came here to our venue. Now it sounds like I'm talking up our venue, but he was very kind of like, oh, this is very different for the Brussels bubble, and he was very excited about it. But he just kept saying all the event venues I've ever had in the Brussels bubble are just these square, boxy corporate rooms, big and small. There's some kind of more niche stuff, but it's almost not set up to be a venue. So how do you tie that with your venue selection? You're talking about micro communities, you're talking about kind of smaller conversations happening, things like that. What do you look for in a venue?
I mean, it's tricky because I think there's one piece of it where obviously the location can be very important. If you're trying to get a lot of MEPs to show up at your event, if you're having it all the way near Brussels North, they're probably not going to show up, right? Like, it's just the reality of how.
But do you think that's overblown?
It could be. I mean, I think if it's the right event, maybe they would. I don't know. I'm not an MEP, but it's something that I think people really cling on to, this idea that like it does need to be somewhat near the bubble in some way in the EU quarter. Does it need to be right across the street? Not necessarily.
See, we're not selling our venue. We are not selling our venue.
But on the other side of that, I think it really depends on, like, depending on what you want to do with the event. If you want it to be this cool, innovative, kind of forward-thinking style event, if it's in a stuffy hotel ballroom that looks like it hasn't been renovated since the 60s, then it's maybe not quite the vibe. Like, you can dress things up, of course, but I think having a venue that's reflective of the kind of vibe you're trying to create with the event itself is something that I think does a lot of the heavy lifting on the day itself. But of course, there's a lot of other variables to keep in mind. Of course, with the AV capabilities as well, if you're going to be filming things on the day of, which you should, it's another aspect.
So, like, what do you, in terms of AV stuff, you're like this type of person who walks into the room and like clicks? Blows my mind. No, you don't.
What? Clicks?
AV people do that sometimes. They go and like click, oh, the acoustics. And
yeah, okay, yeah.
I find it bizarre.
Have you ever seen me do that?
But all right, you walk into a room and you see it differently to how I would see it.
Yeah.
What are you looking for in terms of, you walk into, let's say, an empty room or a venue space? What are you looking for in terms of a stage, where a stage could go? What is a good stage? What is a bad stage?
Well, for me, a good stage is always one that's elevated, right?
Why do people need to be elevated? We're not elevated right now.
We're not, but this is much more intimate, and that's the difference, right? Because if it's not elevated, then, okay, say you have 80 people sitting, people in the back are not going to see you, and they're sitting in the front. So the elevation helps for, if it is, a kind of theater-style flat seating, then you want that elevated stage so people can look over, the guy who's got a nice afro in front, but they can still see.
Those in Brussels, yeah.
Yeah, those, yeah.
EU Brussels.
Diversity, right?
Yeah.
So those are kind of the important aspects. The lighting of the stage as well, right? I mean, how is the stage lit? Is it as dark as the rest of the room? Well,
should the
then
stage
the
be
eye
lit?
is not getting drawn towards that stage.
So stages should be lit.
Definitely.
Front lighting, back lighting.
As much as you have, right?
Really?
Yeah.
But you're big on backlighting as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, as you can tell here, yes, it's very much backlit.
But why is that important?
Because it separates, at least on camera especially, it separates the person speaking from the background, right? So it creates a bit more of a three-dimensional image, and it creates depth.
Right.
And those are really important things for video work.
Right.
But, for someone sitting here, sitting now, it does look nicer too, no?
Oh, really? So I didn't know that. So when you have a stage that's lit from behind, it's even just nicer on the eye than
yes,
video.
as long as you're not blinding people sitting here.
Right.
So that's the hard part of the backlighting is, right now I do have a bit of, kind of harsh light in my eye.
Oh,
That
yeah.
makes it a little bit more difficult to sit on the stage.
Right.
But it does look nicer. There's always trade-offs that you kind of
Yeah.
have to do with these.
But that's the
these
speaker
things.
experience. We care about the guest experience. Speakers. Yeah, Malte often sends us screenshots of shows that are happening, like live streams or just big events from big reputable organizations and media outlets sometimes, where let's say the stage is lit pretty bad and like you can see all the shadows of the speaker on this beautiful backdrop, but you just see all these shadows, and that's a bad look, right? It's not.
Definitely bad. I mean, having a nicely lit stage, having a nicely lit environment that people are looking at, you know, if you're going to be there for half a day, you want to look at something nice as well. You know, you don't want to see harsh shadows. You don't want to have people squinting because the backlighting is kind of going in their face.
Are you a fan of the audience kind of being dark?
Yes.
Yeah, so the audience dark stage.
But I mean, it's you know, when you go to the cinema, for example, the room is not lit.
Yeah.
It's.
But
to
what does that
draw the
create?
eye.
What does it, in terms of the experience, how does that?
It's drawing the eye towards. It's like, okay, you're not going to be focusing on the person sitting next to you. You're going to be focusing on what's on stage because that's what's lit. That's what's drawing the eye.
Right. And so we've been talking a lot about stage shows recently, Bump. Maybe you can define what stage shows are and why we like to talk about stage shows as opposed to just events, and how people should think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one and the same. It's just that stage shows work just a bit harder, right? I think the idea is that Brussels is an event town. I think all of us have been to events, right? That's just a big part of working in the bubble. Events are everywhere. It's how people exchange ideas. People have their annual events. People present research papers, whatever the reason. But the struggle in Brussels, I think, is that sometimes, as I said before, we do events for the sake of events, or we do events without really thinking about the user experience, so to speak, of the audience and kind of what sort of experience you're creating for them on the day of the show itself, or even beforehand. And so stage shows, for us, just simply put, are events that have, you know, a bit of a show element, whether that is maybe more bite-sized content, shorter panels, music that transitions people between kind of those dead moments where people are switching microphones or coming up on stage. It's, you know, having videos and dynamic content interspersed throughout. It's really about creating a show. When you go to a concert or a stand-up comedian or whatever, there's always these elements of, you know, we're going to play music when people come out. We're going to build this anticipation and this excitement. And that is what gets people engaged when they go to an event, right?
I feel like what people could, maybe not this room because there's a lot of event people and comms people in this room, but what people can easily overlook that stuff, right? And just feel like they could go to a comedy show and be like, oh, that was a great show. And they wouldn't recognize that all these little, someone had sat and thought about all these little transitions that really works, but you have to sit and think about them.
Exactly, yeah. You really have to produce the event, right? You have to think like a producer and think, okay, maybe there's this moment where we have to transition between two panels. Otherwise, it's just awkward dead air if we don't play, like, you know,
But why is awkward dead air so bad?
It's bad because it completely ruins the momentum, I think, of an event, right?
And the momentum is so important.
The momentum is very important because I think it's the difference between someone really being locked in and engaged to what's happening versus, oh, they're doing some stuff up there and this has nothing to do with me. Let me get my phone out, and then you never go away. You never put your phone away. So it's just one of those things where you want to keep that energy going. You don't want to kill that momentum because the second you do, you can lose your audience so quickly. And so by being very thoughtful and intentional with every single touch point that people have, I think that's why the pre-production process is so crucial when putting together a stage show, because you need to think, okay, you know, we need X number of microphones available and get these people ready before these people leave the stage, and we need to play this transition at this exact moment, and this person wants to, you know, present a video. So like there's all these different pieces that you have to really lock into the program and ensure that everyone is aligned with how you want that show to go. So it's really about thinking yeah, as I said, like a producer, you are trying to make it just a bit more entertaining, a bit smarter, just being very clever with how you use the space and the time, and ensure that whatever it is you're presenting to the audience is something that is worth watching. Right?
I would say it's probably especially crucial in Brussels, right? Because we're in a town that, and I may debate this later on, kind of lacks charisma. Speakers lack charisma a little bit, like generally speaking, it's not a high energy town. And so if you leave some dead air, someone who's speaking their fourth language on stage will be happy to make that more awkward. And they're not going to pick up the baton and be like, well, sorry for the dead air and let's get this show back on the road.
That's the hardest part of events, is finding those speakers, finding the right charismatic speakers. It's so difficult.
But okay, so you spoke about kind of creating this experience. So someone needs to sit and think about how people like enter the space, how they occupy the space, what they're going to see in front of them on stage. Like you're trying to think of their whole 360 experience. Let's say you've done all of that, you've got a great venue, you've thought about how people move into the space, that their like seating is good, the lighting is good. What are you thinking in terms of, well, why do you guys, I assume you think everything should be kind of filmed or be set up to film.
Yeah.
What is the value in that for events? Like, why not just hold a great event and make it a one-off thing?
I mean, I wouldn't always film everything.
Right.
That's not going to give you great content. What gives you great content is filming the event and then doing interviews. Because the interviews, what you get from those is you get a distilled version of what's happened at the event.
Side interviews, right?
Side interviews, yeah. And you get something much more concise that will have far more impact online than, cutting out a piece of a speech that someone gave.
And why is that? Is that because someone will be much more concise?
Much more concise.
Right?
It's much more concise. It's less kind of, well, I'm on stage kind of presenting something to someone and I'm speaking for 3 minutes straight, as politicians like to do.
Yeah.
Plus
10, 20, 30 minutes straight.
You're never going to get something great out of it. You're going to have to put a lot of work in to try to get something that's even usable out of it. Yeah. It's much better to ask them a couple of simple questions afterwards.
And
what was this about?
You prefer, in an ideal world, you like being able to film the stage, I take it, but then also having a separate space, like in a breakout room or corridor or whatever, where you can do these separate interviews.
Sure,
Yeah. I think it definitely helps to kind of keep lengthen the shelf life of your event as well. I think that's the really crucial piece of that. It's a bit the adage, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, did it make a sound? It's sort of the same with events. If people show up the day of, but then the event is over and job done. If you don't film anything, you just only hit 50, 100 people, whoever was in the room, right? And even that, you don't know if they paid attention. So it's always good, I think, to think of your event as a content machine in a way. It's its own kind of living, breathing thing where you want to, well ahead of time, think of, how can I use this content effectively? How can I create more things to share with my audiences digitally, well beyond after the event is over. As Malte said, it's maybe not best just to film a whole panel or a whole session and say, okay, job done, come watch this 50-minute video. But if you get, a 2-3 minute video that has snippets and maybe some B-roll and a bit of a summary of what happened on the day, it involves more of your audience and kind of creates that sense of community, even for the people who weren't necessarily there on the day. It's just like what we're doing here, right? We're recording this and filming it, and having all of your lovely smiling faces here is fantastic, but then it also gives us a vehicle to later share this content with more people in our community, for them to also see what was discussed. And so it's a bit of a domino effect of that content, but thinking very strategically about that before you even have the event gives you the chance to, have a better ROI, so to speak, on your event, because more people will see it and more people will interact with it and be a part of it.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing though in Brussels. If you're like a small communications team, or you have like a videographer, or you Yeah, it's difficult, I think, for people to think well beyond the event if they're really in the trenches trying to organize the whole event. And then someone's like, oh, we should find a way to make this stretch further. And you're like, I'm just trying to get the event done. Okay, cool. And I wanted to ask you about live streams, how you feel, because a lot of people come and they say, I just want to live stream the whole event and I want to film the whole thing. I want people to be able to stay at home and watch the event. How do you feel about optimizing the live stream and optimizing the in-person physical event?
Yeah, Malte has a lot of feelings about
Oh
this.
yeah, sure, yeah. I mean, there's a time and a place for live streams. They certainly have value.
What's that time and place?
When you do something big, when you have some big speakers, when you have like 3 commissioners speaking at your event, I mean, something huge, right? Then it makes sense.
Yeah.
Also the audience, right? Like when you tell us you have like a legit audience in China who needs to watch this event.
Legit, not like 3 people, right? I mean, because that's what often does happen is that it's like, oh yeah, we need to stream this for like the 3 people that are in Japan or whatever, who are going to get up at 3 in the morning to watch this. But, you know, if you're going to have something small, I mean, there's no point in streaming it because you'll have like 10 people watching it. Record it. You can put it up afterwards. It's fine, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you know, people don't need to see it exactly live. It's fine to record it and you know, take your time with it, edit it.
And if you were going to do the live stream, someone's come, like a CEO last second has been like, no, we need a live stream. Do you then really try and optimize for the live stream? Do you try and make the live stream like TV show production or do you just optimize for the room?
Well, it depends on the budget at that point.
Right.
Because it's like, I would love to do everything like a TV program, but that costs a lot of money.
Right.
And no one really has that money or really wants to spend that money for the probably 50 people that are going to watch that live stream.
You're saying the comms expectations in Brussels are higher than the budget?
What?
Really?
Yeah. Revelation.
Wow.
Clipped. Yeah.
Job done. I think that's the show.
So, you know, in a live stream, oftentimes you can get away with some fairly basic equipment. What you don't want to get away with is crappy audio. Because that is kind of the most important thing. I mean, even for in-person, right? I mean, if you have bad audio, you're screwed.
Yeah.
But if
you could only optimize for one thing, it would be audio. Of
Absolutely
everything.
the audio, yeah. I mean, stream the thing as a podcast live. I mean, whatever. I mean, but it's the audio that you really is important.
Yeah, I don't want,
if people can't hear you, very bad.
But also with live streams, but I mean, you kind of touched on the fact that it's a very expensive thing to do, but also just so many things can go wrong in the moment, right? And then that sort of reflects not poorly on the organization, but it's just not a good look, right? And so when you have the opportunity to film and then stream it later, that gives you the chance to edit. It gives you a chance maybe to cut out some dead air or if there was like some awkward thing, or if you ran into audio issues, you can hopefully fix that, right? If you have you cut them out, or if you have another audio channel.
The graphic didn't get put on right.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
So there's just so many things that you can kind of save yourself with if you don't necessarily live stream. And so it really needs to have like a specific use case for that to make sense. Otherwise, you're spending a lot of money and a lot of stress for something that doesn't really give you that.
I mean, live streams as well, you have to start them on time. If a speaker turns up late and then you have a commissioner who's speaking first,
and they don't show
then you
up, or
suddenly
they're
have to, you know, change your schedule a little bit.
Let's talk a bit about post then. So you've run this great event, it all worked out, you filmed a lot of stuff. How should you be thinking about, you mentioned the event should stretch well beyond the day itself. We found often, I think, that you can get like 3, 6, sometimes even a year's worth of content out of 3, 6 months, not 3, 6 years. Out of one event.
Right.
How do you think about that? How do you think about kind of sequencing that? How do you think about, because some clients often won't think about that, or broader teams, like the communications team might, but the broader team won't think about that. They'll just demand it when they think of it. So they'll be like, oh yeah, we want that. Should you be thinking about prioritizing the content?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's always good to have some kind of, I would say like wrap up or after movie of some kind to sort of synthesize everything that happened. It gives you a chance to thank the people who were involved, to mention maybe other organizations who spoke or were a part of it. It's just kind of a nice sort of kumbaya moment for everyone to be like, we did the event. But then after that, content-wise, that's kind of when you get more into the nitty-gritty of the actual event and what was discussed. Obviously, it comes down to priorities. Maybe there are certain, I don't know, pillars or topics that you talk about in your organization that are going to maybe resonate a bit more with your audience, so you can kind of prioritize accordingly. But let's say you film, I don't know, 10 or 15 interviews with people. I think it's good to have a bit of a cascading effect where, I don't know, you post one every week or so, and it sort of fits into your drumbeat of content for months to come. But it still feels fresh and interesting because it's still new content, right? If people weren't actually at the event or didn't necessarily engage with that person or that session that they were in, it's a nice way to say, okay, this is what, you know, we're talking about. This is kind of the agenda setting that we did at the event. These are the things that are important to us. And so it gives you that ability to not necessarily reinvent the wheel, but to always have fresh, interesting content for people to watch and
I
consume.
guess there's the matter as well that if you filmed them in a separate room, so you didn't film them with the event background behind them or lots of people socializing at lunch or whatever, then you can make the content quite evergreen, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it doesn't have to be about the event. It doesn't have to be situated in that event.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you can even have the event in the backdrop. I think it depends a little bit, right? There's so many variables with that, but I think if it's someone just speaking at a nondescript event of something happening behind them, I think it adds kind of some action and some dynamism to the frame. But it doesn't mean that they need to say, today on, you know, June 10th, 2025, we're talking about whatever, right? You don't, exactly. You never want to say, you never want to say like last week the commission released this, right? So you want to think, more big picture, you could say.
Avoid
Like what is the one thing the industry should care about in this mandate, right? And then you have 5 years of shelf life for the content. So
the big, I feel like people shy away from big, broad questions sometimes because they're like, no, it needs to be very technical and specific. And often people can talk about that, but give them the big, broad thing and they will get into that.
Yeah, give them the space to talk about it. I think, and it's a nice way to tie everything together, right? Because if you're asking one big question to all of those interview subjects, you get kind of a nice, cacophony is not the right word, but you know, like kind of a choir of different voices and sounds that are happening from different perspectives and POVs and industries and whatever around this big question. And I think that's the thing that, as you said, people shy away from, but it's something that I think a lot of people resonate with. If you're scrolling through LinkedIn, you don't want to watch a 5-minute super highly technical video. You want to hear from smart people talking about big ideas, right? And so that's
it's a touch point, right? Like I feel like a lot of people in Brussels, it's this town of overthinkers, I think, and they want to get their message on video as perfect as their policy amendment, when really you're like, dude, like people are happy to see your face, your contacts and friends and whatever, and they're like, oh, he or she said something, let me check that out, and they don't want your policy amendment. But anyway, so I was going to ask you a fun question before, because we need to wrap up. Before we do a couple of audience questions, if anyone has one. I don't think we have a mic, right? So we do. All right, do we have a mic? So can the mic just appear somewhere? I'm just,
Jonas is on it.
But before we get into that, just give me the one thing, or it can be 3 or 10, but maybe one thing you most hate, because let's add a bit of hate into this episode. Hate about Brussels events, and like that you just wish people would either stop doing or do better. What should they stop doing? I hate every time I go to a Brussels event and they have this.
Well, one thing, don't have 2 MEPs on the same panel.
Oh, why? Why 2? What?
Or 3, you know.
Why?
Just one.
Because they just start beefing?
Yeah. No, because they just always say the same thing. Right? You want a little bit of tension.
Even if you got one from like the
between
extreme right and extreme left, they would just say the same thing. Is that your view?
But if they're on the same panel, they usually do, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. Okay.
Right.
Well, that's my experience anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know if Anna will have a different
For me, I sort of wish that events, well, especially panels, I wish they weren't so political for certain organizations. I think something that happens is that, especially with say, trade associations, they always want, you know, all of their members heard, all of the industry and maybe public sector, et cetera, like all these different voices heard, which is nice. But then in the end, it turns into this weird, awkward, like, oh, but this member wants a spot on the panel, even though the person isn't necessarily best suited to be that person on the panel, right?
And there's already like 10 people on the
exactly,
panel. Like,
and it's like, let's add another
turns
person.
into
Just
an echo
let's let,
chamber.
yeah, exactly. Let's let 30 people on the panel. Who
Right.
cares? Like, it really gets out of hand sometimes.
Yeah. So I didn't want to go too much into like the.
We will get into that.
Yeah. I was like, these guys can talk about like the panels.
Yeah,
And
no, but I mean, it just things get very politicized, I think,
Right.
sometimes in Brussels, and that's the frustrating thing, because I would rather it be about the content and having a good session rather than, oh, we need this member who
But
gives
they're
us
in
a
a
lot of
tough
money.
spot.
But also
Admittedly,
just
they're in a
different
tough
points
spot.
of views, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you want to have people with different point of views on the panel, and that's for me.
Exactly.
Those were the panels when I was working at Euractiv. Those were the panels that had the best thing, because there were people actually arguing and debating different things, and it wasn't just, you know,
So an
here's
event- your
a
event
panel
needs
of
a bit of
industry
tension,
and they're
a
all
bit
gonna
of-
a little bit of tension. If you just have like an industry panel and then maybe a guy from the commission and a guy from the parliament and
Saying we
you
need to
know someone from the
collaborate.
council, whatever, and it's just like, and then, we're gonna work together and
We
this.
need it to be on the verge of a cage match at any given moment,
Right.
and then that's what creates the
That's
excitement, right?
Okay.
I mean, those panels are worth filming and putting out, and you know.
Exactly.
So yeah, we've gone over, but are there any questions that we can? Audience questions. Guys, this is part of an event. Like you have to. We didn't want to say it, but.
Yes.
Go. Do we have a mic? We have a mic.
You can sit in Habib.
Oh, okay, we did that. Yeah. All right, get me out. Kick me out.
You can sit in
So, oh my God, I'm not prepared.
You could have left your handbag. It doesn't look like a dangerous crowd. Like,
Hi. So my question is, who in this room or in Brussels in general has panels that have a special format? Say, who speaks first? I'm really thinking of, formats which aren't just the moderator introduces, one person speaks after another, speaks after another, speaks after another, and then somebody wraps up. But basically, I see a lot of panels where nobody speaks to each other, and here's very refreshing, for example. But I've seen this a lot, and I think there are lots of ways to do it, and if we could even, write a book about this, I'm sure it would sell. Just with formulas, it's simple, it's not complicated, So if this exists, or if anybody has great ideas of things that work, I'd love to hear about them now or later, but in general.
are you guys going to get
Yeah,
into
I was
that?
going to say, joke's on you, because we're talking about that in the next session. No, but I love that question, because I think indeed the Brussels is really craving different formats for events, right? I think there is that appetite for us to think a bit more creatively about how we present these panels or these different sessions, because indeed you get into an issue where it's just, oh, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about this? And you're just kind of going down the line and asking people questions, and it sort of takes away from the point of having a panel.
Too long introductions. And,
Right.
I mean, for me, it's not a panel, simply.
Exactly. Yeah, indeed. So it's definitely something that Anna and I will be jumping into in the next session. But I think it's a very valid question, because it's something that I think a lot of organizations are struggling with, because panels are panels, and we can be a bit smarter with how we present them, right? And it doesn't always have to be a panel, right? Ooh, a hush over the audience. It doesn't have to be a panel. We can
It can be
think
fireside chats.
exactly. It could be a TEDx style talk, right? You can have someone come up and speak for 10 minutes, and it's very snappy and digestible and interesting. So definitely, yeah.
I mean, my idea is always get to the content as quickly as possible, right?
Yes,
Skip all of the housekeeping stuff,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
you could write that on a piece of paper and put it on a chair. I mean,
Yeah.
you could put the names and titles.
Sometimes you have to cut people off as well. So any other questions? Like, we have another question. You guys can just.
Hi, Felix.
Oh, I was
Come
putting this
on
person
up.
behind you, but it's fine.
I told you, Habib, that I would talk for hours on this.
Hi, welcome.
Yes, hello. I have a question. In fact, it's because you can have really good panels, really good speakers, really good production, really good images, etc. But at the end of the day, you realize that, and it's true, I think, for all the sectors, that in fact, it's always the same. It's like the industry talking to the industry. So what would be, maybe it's a question of setup or the venue, I don't know, but so what would be your advice to avoid and to be like more open or, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to necessarily create an echo chamber with your event, right? You don't want it to just be industry talking to each other and not really creating any progress or kind of moving the needle on anything. But I think for me, the obvious thing is to scare yourself a little bit with the people you're asking to be on your panel. Like, are there other competing industries and or industries that maybe take issue with what you're doing as an industry? Are there, you know, certain activists or certain people, or I'm seeing Philo's face, but it doesn't have to be contentious, right? It doesn't need to be somebody who hates your industry, so to speak, but maybe someone who challenges your point of view, right? Someone who has a different idea of how to solve certain issues. Maybe you think of public sector speakers rather than just private sector. Maybe you can invite a policymaker, as we sort of established. They just all say the same things, but it's
No, I mean, you still need them. But,
exactly, it can add a bit to the conversation. So just kind of thinking beyond just your industry of who you can include that maybe doesn't necessarily have the same point of view as you. It is a risk, and it is something that maybe can make people a bit nervous when they're organizing their event, but I think it can pay dividends in the end because it creates a more interesting conversation and it lets you have different points of view that are presented.
But it also challenges you, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you shouldn't be afraid to be challenged.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think it shows that you're willing to
You should
listen
be
to other
confident,
perspectives.
right?
Yeah.
To about what you want to say and what you're there to say as well.
Yeah, that's good. All right.
One more. Was there one more question? Yeah.
Yeah, come on up.
Hi. So you talked earlier about user experience of the audience, and some events use the kind of gong example. If you go to the theatre, others use mobile phone participation, so it helps to guide the conversation along. But then the downside of that is that people have their phones out and start checking emails. Are there any tips, tricks, gimmicks that you've seen work really well in Brussels for events? And are there any that you've seen just kill events because you've got the phone out, for example?
Yeah, do
I
you
mean,
wanna?
Slido has its uses, sure, you know, but then you really have to lean into it, I think.
Yeah.
You have to start doing the polling, you have to start really giving people that ability to interact much more. I've seen moderators run into the audience. That's quite fun. Or like this, you know, you bring them up on stage, you do the kind of hot seat thing.
Yeah, exactly.
That really gives people, some people anyways, the impetus to come up, some people to get too shy as well. But the most boring thing you can do, and that for me never works, is giving someone in the audience the microphone who then does a 2-minute monologue, which I know we're all used to here, because they also want to then get their point of view across.
Yeah.
My favorite thing in Brussels, by the way, ever, is when you go to an event and someone comes up and they're like, well, so it's not really a question, but, and then they jump into like a 5-minute thing and they just say their point and we're like,
That just kills the
yeah,
momentum.
thank you. Like you should have asked to speak if you were gonna just
So
have your
at that point, I do prefer things like Slido.
Yeah.
If you have a hybrid like event or you're live streaming it and you're doing online audiences, then it's good to have the same thing for both. And at that point, things like Slido make sense anyways.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a mix of things. It also depends on how big or how small your audience is. I would say for an audience like this, it's very easy for us to have you come up and we can all speak and it's a very intimate setting. But if you have, let's say, a 300-person theater and it's a packed house, Slido is great for that because it still allows a bit of anonymity and people can ask their questions and you avoid the monologuing. But I think it's also good to have a host that's willing to get people, you know, speaking up, like, how are we feeling today? You know, I want to get your attention, and have people maybe shout out answers to things. So any kind of audience participation you can integrate into the show itself keeps people awake, but it also hopefully means that they're a bit more engaged with what's happening on stage and they feel like they're a part of that show. But yeah, I think that is maybe a good segue for us to wrap things up.